Can we ever have enough superhero movies? Well, probably, but that's beside the point. The new Indian superhero action film, Minnal Murali, has arrived on Netflix, so should you be watching it? After a lightning strike, two members of a village discover they have new abilities and then must decide if they'll use them for good or evil. So this is presented in Malayalam, and that took me a while to say that. So I watched with its subtitles, and I didn't check out if the dub version was any good because I prefer the original language over anything else. Now this is kind of a long film, but what I've experienced from other Indian films is that it's a normal thing, so this didn't bother me at all. Now, the movie is a little over 2.5 hours, and something that I really appreciate is how much time the script devotes to introducing us and building out the two central characters that are the focus for the story. We have Jason and Shibu, two lovelorn guys in this village who are both pining after women who are unavailable. One evening, a storm is created by the triangular alignment of 3 planets, and within this storm, the two who are just pining after these women are both struck by lightning. And slowly they discover they have some unique abilities, whether that be extreme hearing, super strength, or even a sort of telekinesis. And when this begins, we have some fairly entertaining sequences of these characters discovering what they can do, with a lot of mishaps along the way. I appreciated the time that is spent building this world and the characters. We're not rushed into this origin story, but instead are shown characters that both become semi-sympathetic, whether they're going to be antagonist or protagonist. We get a good sense of them as people, and I really appreciate how each is not cut and dry evil or righteous. I mean, they both share the good and the bad, and I guess that's where the Spider-Man adage comes into play. With great power comes great responsibility. When we see the duo use their powers, the special effects are really well done for the most part. Now, there are a few times where it's painfully obvious that it was done on a green screen or the effect is just clearly CGI, but that's really in the minority of the time. The effects that are used help to add excitement to what we're watching. There's a lot of family drama that takes place within this, helping to keep the story focused on motivations rather than just two people who are duking it out. I think while some of it is a bit melodramatic and maybe even overblown, the crux of the story is solid and engaging. I do believe, though, that this is fairly formulaic in the presentation. I mean, much of what occurs outside of the family interactions reminds me a ton of that brilliant found footage superhero-ish movie Chronicle, where we have some people who acquire powers that then they have to figure out how to use. But along the way, because of some family disappointments, they become obsessed with power and choose to use it for selfish gains rather than anything noble. And I know that's really the formula for most hero movies, and the things that make them stand out or not are the nuances. And this movie does share a lot of similarities with Chronicle, even to the degree that I saw the ending climax coming from pretty far off. That didn't negate my enjoyment of the story, though. I mean, I was engaged with the characters and often conflicted at whether or not I liked them. This was also fun because it had me going back and forth as to who, and then more importantly, why, I was rooting for someone. One thing that I really enjoyed within the story is how the name Minnal Murali is used. Confusion and misdirection are created within the name for the villagers, making that complication one that really helped to enhance the entire narrative. There are some sequences within the storytelling that are visually intriguing as well. They have almost an anime feel to them, as we'll have the black bars of the letterboxing begin to squish the visual portion of the screen, just narrowing our focus to just the pertinent parts. And there are also times where the screen would split vertically into 2 or 3 panels, showing different angles or maybe even just the succession of events on one character. And it's fun to see, and it's not overly distracting. And I think, though, if you do happen to find it distracting, they don't utilize it very much, so it's not a regular thing, even when there are multiple action sequences throughout the film. Now, this is darker than I thought it would end up being. There are some character decisions that lead to consequences, and I was actually a bit shocked that the story went there. I mean, they fit within the narrative and didn't feel out of place at all, but I was still surprised that the story chose to take a darker tone in spots. Now, when there's violence for the story, much of the time the camera will cut away so that certain portions don't show any type of gore. I mean, we still get punches and kicks and people being thrown through solid objects, which is a lot of fun to watch. But if someone would ever be close to just being killed, or maybe something gruesome could happen to that character, it's not shown, just leaving it to our imagination of that outcome. This makes the movie easier for a wider audience to enjoy without the fear of all kinds of blood and guts or people's heads being smashed in. The costumes our protagonist and antagonist wear are really cool. There's one at the end that's decidedly more superhero-ish, but before that, we have a character who's wearing this hooded mask that looks a lot like a scarecrow, and then another one who has this really great-looking red headscarf around his face to hide his identity. And both of these work really well for their characters, and they fit very naturally and convincingly within the narrative. Now, one thing that amazed me is there is a scene where both of our characters are running just stupid quick over all kinds of landscapes, and they're both doing it in flip flops. I mean, I can't do more than shuffle along, let alone move at a quick pace while wearing flip flops. So it's truly amazing that they can even run with them at all and then have the camera speed them up. I mean, they'd fly off my feet in the first several yards. Now, I know that's neither here nor there, but it caught my attention and it amazed me, so I figured I'd share. So overall, Minnal Murali is an engaging origin story of a hero and villain. I love how both stories develop, showing us that at any point they both could be the protagonist or the antagonist. And while the story is a longer one, the depth and backstory we get on the characters help to solidify their motivations and make for an engaging tale. I do think the story progression is pretty obvious and predictable, but the ride is enjoyable thanks to the two differently charismatic leads. There's no sex or nudity, not much profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give Minnal Murali 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a superhero origin story that you gravitate towards? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.